Hey, everybody. It is Chris. As you can see, lovely Miami is behind me. Well, such as it is. I don't know that you can really see it, but there's this really cool bank building out there. It looks like something out of Batman. Anyway, hello. Welcome to week 8. Again, my apologies for the late notice on this. I did not expect to have to be gone this week, unfortunately. It was unavoidable. So, with that in mind, a couple things we're going to focus on this week. And I hope I'm looking at the camera right now because I always do this on my iPad where I'm trying to look at my own face. So, this week we're going to be looking at the role your sources play in your final presentation, and also your visuals and what visuals you're gonna use for the presentation. So these are both things we focused on a little bit before, but we're going to look at them a little bit more specifically this time around in terms of how you're going to approach it from an assignment perspective. So with sources before, we talked about what makes a relevant source, what makes a credible source, that sort of a thing. What we're going to do this time is we're actually going to look at an annotated bibliography. And so this week's assignment is going to be an annotated bibliography for the sources that you'll be using in your final presentation. Now, if you've never completed an annotated bibliography before, it's a little different in terms of kind of the goal and the idea of it. But really what it's intended to do is to kind of give you a sense of, kind of give you an opportunity to reflect on the quality of your sources and why you're using the sources you're using. And I think it's important because it's very easy when we're writing a paper or an article or doing a speech or whatever it is that we're doing in this regard where you're using research. It's easy to kind of forget why, it's like, well, let me find some sources and plug in a couple of ideas and, all right, I'll add this statistic and research is done. Well, that's true to a certain extent, and that's not ineffective. But in terms of kind of choosing sources and making those determinations about how to approach research and incorporating research into your work, it's always best to kind of take a step back and think about, why am I using the sources that I'm using, right? What is it about this particular source that makes it relevant to what I'm doing? And the example that I often use is, it's one thing to get a sound bite, and to quote a senator or something like that about how they feel on a certain law. But it's another thing completely to actually cite the law itself, if that makes sense. So I think it's important to kind of consider why we use the sources that we use, and that's kind of the goal of the annotated bibliography. So the annotated bibliography, what it consists of, and I'll post a couple of links along with this video so you can kind of see a model. Basically what it is you're providing a fully formatted citation for your source, okay? You'll do this for each source. There'll be the fully formatted citation, and then you're going to have about a paragraph after that explaining kind of in summary what the source is, what it's saying, right? What is the source, right? What's the idea? Is it an article? Is it a court transcript? Whatever it is. A summary, just a few sentences about what the source is, why the source is credible, and that's very important. Why the author, why the organization, why the source itself is a credible source and is worthy of being used in academic research, because that's very important. And then finally, how you'll use that source in your speech. What role does it serve? I mean, is this source simply to provide background information? If you're doing a persuasive speech, is this source to help support your argument in some way? Is it, if you're writing about, a law or something being enacted, is this, perhaps the person who brought the bill right to Congress? I mean, all of those sorts of things you're going to want to consider. So the annotated bibliography should consist of 4 things: the citation, the reference, fully formatted, and then a paragraph that includes, number 1, the summary, number 2, the credibility, and number 3, how you'll use it. Okay? So you're going to do that for each of your sources, and then you're going to turn that in as a Word document. And as I said, I'll post an example of an annotated bibliography, so you can kind of see what they should look like when they're fully formatted. It really is just as simple as your reference and then a paragraph that follows it. So you'll do that for each of your sources. As a reminder, you can either do an informative speech or a persuasive speech, one of the two. It makes no difference to me. Whatever you think is acceptable. I'll be looking at your assignments that were due by tonight, your outlines, your sample outlines, to kind of get a sense of what it is you're going to be doing. I'll take a look at those over the next few days, and I will submit them back to you with feedback and comments. So keep an eye on your inbox for that, just because I'd like to give you at least some idea of kind of where you're headed with things. And then next week, when we take a look at the annotated bibliography in class, when you submit it, we'll take a look kind of the role that plays as you're integrating research into your speech. Okay. The other aspect of the speech this week that you'll want to work on is a draft of your presentation itself, whatever the visual element of your presentation is. Okay. So you're going to be submitting a draft of your presentation. Again, sort of like the draft of the outline. It doesn't have to be complete yet. It doesn't have to be the finished product, but it's going to need to be at least a draft of whatever you're doing, whether it's PowerPoint, Prezi, whatever the medium is that you're going to present when you give your final speech, whatever that visual element is, you want to submit a draft. There will be a folder called Final Presentation Draft in the assignment tab that you can upload that to. So that I can take a look at it again, provide some feedback, provide some commentary, and give you some sense of kind of where you're headed with that. I'm not worried. I think everyone's done a very nice job so far with regard to your presentations, and the kind of visuals that you've chosen, the kind of information you've chosen for your slides has been great. And I think it's been representative of what it seemed, from an audience perspective, from my perspective, and I think the class's perspective. So far, your presentations have been very representative, I think, of what you were trying to achieve. I think so. That's great. And so I have no reason to think that you'll suddenly fall off the tracks as far as that goes. So your assignment this week is twofold. You'll have the annotated bibliography, which will have its own folder and assignments. It'll just be called annotated bibliography, and then final presentation draft. And you'll submit wherever your slides are by next class period. That's what you'll want to submit there. Again, I want to remind you, this is not something you have to do tonight. Obviously, this is what you would do over the course of the week. What we would have done tonight in class is we would have talked about kind of the complete sentence outline and the goal of that. And I'm going to actually upload a couple of videos over the course of the week, kind of talking a little bit about those things. So we're going to kind of stagger the announcements this week. So keep a close eye on the course page. I'm going to post a number of things over the course of the week to kind of help you through the process of creating your final presentation in kind of a more focused way than we've done before. So I hope that'll be beneficial to everyone. So your assignments for next week: annotated bibliography, number 1, a draft of the visual part of your presentation, number 2. And from there, next week we will talk about those 2 assignments. We'll kind of work on polishing your final outlines, kind of some considerations to think about as you're working through that. And then the following week is our last week, so we are nearing the finish line. It's going by very quickly. So with all that in mind, have a great week. I hope everyone is cruising along with their topics and whatnot. I look forward to seeing what you've decided on as far as your topics go for this final speech. And I will check in within a couple of days with another probably video announcement addressing some of these things in a bit more detail. But I wanted to get this up so that you could kind of get the process underway and start thinking about how you're going to approach all of this. So with that, I leave you to it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you all very soon.